10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everybody, and I hope everyone is well. This is Mike, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, Michael Voss. And so we've got a lot going on here today. It's just... we have breaking news that's happening in just a few moments, and I'm going to get right into it. It's been a hectic day. There's a lot of stuff that's going on right now. And literally, up until just about 30 seconds ago, I've been trying to check and get information about a breaking story that I want to be talking about with you in just a moment. But let's go through a couple of things that we have going on today that we're going to be talking about throughout the show. And by the way, I do want to thank each and every one of you for being here with me to be on the program. You guys make all the difference, and I thank you all for being here because you're wonderful. I love my audience. I really do. But some of the things that we have going on today that are going to be affecting a lot of things are some of the breaking news that's happening today. Obviously, we know that, and we're going to have Eric J. Caron, a retired US diplomat, former US special agent, who's going to be on the program. He's going to be talking with us about, what he thinks is going to be happening going forward. I met him over at CPAC 2019. He's a great guy. We had a great conversation. He's the author of the Switched On, The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent. It's a great book. I'll be reviewing that very shortly. This is not a paid interview, by the way, just in case someone wants to throw that out there. But no, this is a conversation we're having with him based on his expertise. And the review of the book is separate, but that's just something I am reading right now. So I did want to go into that a little bit. Obviously, there is other news that's going on right now, especially with Representative Adam Schiff, which you may have heard about. He was one of the leading proponents taking on President Trump and promoting the idea of collusion, which has now been debunked and has been proven to be completely false. In fact, there's a lot of news going on because Republicans have come out, and as Politico is reporting today, which is March 28th, the Republicans are reporting in the first House, the House Intelligence Committee, sorry, it's a lot of news going on. I'm trying to keep it all in my head. But in the House Intelligence Committee meeting today, 9 members of the House Intelligence Committee, all Republicans, signed a letter requesting the resignation of Mr. Schiff so that he can be removed because of his quasi-treasonous approach towards trying to depose President Trump from a legal election. So that's big news, and obviously a lot of people are talking about that. That's something I want to get into, and I'll definitely bring that up with Eric, excuse me. There is also some news. Obviously, we've been talking about, or you may have heard about, the Jussie Smollett story, which I believe, and I was speaking about this on Tuesday in our program, that as you can see from the meme, there is a growing number of people. I was maybe one of the first, I would like to believe, as the news was breaking as we were on our program, that Jussie Smollett was released and he got off scot-free because the news media needed something else to talk about besides the fact that they had been pushing a message of collusion throughout the United States for 2.5 years, and it's completely false. That they were putting out a narrative to attack the candidate and then president, Donald Trump, and it was false, and it was demonstrably false, and there was no truth to it. And their prolonged attack has been a disservice to the entire United States, and their embarrassment led them to seek out any and every story possible to try and take away from that story. Anything they could talk about that would be anything but that, they were happy to talk about. And thus, Jussie Smollett, who had some favors from on high, obviously, it seems to be from his connections with the Obama administration, possibly Senator Kamala Harris, that these strings were pulled to get him out of. There's no way that anyone could commit a hoax in the manner and to the degree that he did and get away with it. No one else in the nation. You couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. We'd be in jail. We would be facing the 16 charges, including felony charges. We would be strung up and we'd be seeing jail for the rest of our lives, probably. Mr. Smollett got off with $10,000 and community service stuffing envelopes for a political partisan group, which is considered community service somehow. Okay, that's really interesting. And he did, I believe it was 18 hours. So that leads a lot of people, and especially me. I suggested it on Tuesday, on our Tuesday program, as the news was breaking, that this was completely political. These were strings being pulled. This was a privilege of being a celebrity. And it seems that, according to the meme and the way people are looking at it, a lot of others agree, it's the media just trying to find a way to not talk about collusion and being wrong. But with all that said, there is something else that I think is very, very important to talk about. And this is what literally within the last half hour I received this information. So I want to make sure we get this right. Newsflash. Newsflash. All right, folks. So this is breaking news. It is exclusive to the Exceptional Conservative Network, where you're seeing the program, as well as to the No Soundbites Allowed podcast. No one else has gotten this information because it's just coming out. Now, if you remember, a couple of shows back, we were talking about the presidential races, and we had been talking about all the candidates who were in that presidential race, the 2020 Democratic nominees. We were predicting who might be the candidates, the nomination for president and vice president. And I had made some guesses, and you'll be able to see that. But what we see here is the most recent list. And there's about 23 people on this list. And there's a lot of names, many of them people you've never heard of. Probably like Julian Castro is not a well-known name. Jay Inslee, not a name. We can go through a few of the others. People that really no one knows about. Sherrod Brown. I mean, unless you're deep into Democratic politics. Now, mind you, out of all these 23 people of the list that I am showing you right now, there is a name that is also supposedly a candidate that you have not heard about. And that name is, oops, wrong one. That name is Alan Brown, okay? Alan, his actual name is Robert Allen Brown. And I kind of find it interesting that the Democrats have so many candidates that are running for nomination that don't use their actual names. But in this case, we're talking about a gentleman by the name of Robert Brown. Robert Allen Howe, Howe. You probably have never heard about this gentleman because his big claim to fame, as far as I can tell, is that he ran for the 10th Congressional District in Pennsylvania in 2018, and he lost. He didn't lose just a little bit. He lost a lot. Okay, just so you have an idea, in the 2018 race, he wasn't the candidate. He was in the primary. And he came in fourth with 4,000 votes, which was about 10% of the Democratic primary race. So this is his claim to fame, much like Beto O'Rourke or Robert O'Rourke, who is the fake Mexican who is running for president. His big claim to fame was he named a building, a post office, as I recall, and he lost to Ted Cruz by 3%. And that justifies him being a 2020 presidential candidate. On the Democratic ticket, Alan Howe is justified by the fact that he ran for Congress, got 10% of the vote in a primary, and lost. Okay, I've run for Congress myself, so I can't say that isn't a reason, but it's not the best reason to run for president. Not for Congress, for president. But he believes he can make a run for president. And in fact, his big thing on his presidential race is he wants to impeach Trump now. This is the main page of the the Howe, Howe, 2020 homepage. This is what he's promoting. He wants to impeach President Trump because of Russia. There you go. He's all about Russia and Russian collusion. That's his claim to fame. That's what he's looking for. He thinks, and he apparently was in the military. I don't know a lot about this candidate because there's no reason to know a lot about him. But that is his claim to fame. That's what he's looking for running for president. Now, I bring this all up because Alan Howe was supposed to be in my neck of the woods in the southern tier of New York today at SUNY Broome College. He was going to have an event at 8 p.m., which I was going to be able to speak to a small, very small group of invited individuals. We're talking about roughly 50 people. And it's unclear who had promoted this event. Oops, sorry about that, folks. So no idea who promoted this event. We don't know how he got invited to the campus of a New York college. We're not sure who else was invited to the event. We know he was. But SUNY Broome College, the university, has rescinded the event and canceled it. We know that. And that happened within the last roughly hour or so. And you have to wonder why. Who invited this presidential candidate to SUNY Broome? Would SUNY Broome allow another presidential candidate of a Republican, that would mean President Trump, presumably, to come to the campus and speak as well, to give equal time? That's a question. And those were part of the questions I would ask, but that's not the big thing, because if you actually look at this and paid more attention, here's what we do know about Mr. Alan Howe, the Democratic presidential candidate. What we do know is that this is his Facebook page, just so you can see it, so you know exactly where I'm finding this at. Mr. Howe, on January of 2019, January 13th, on his homepage, has a very unique email. And it states, our group is stained with racists, misogynists, xenophobes, Islamophobes, homophobes, and other reprehensible sorts. He goes on. He's talking about, we hear bigoted comments long before the targets of this hatred ever will. White supremacists and misogynists and others. This guy is extreme. Extreme. And this is his words, talking about the opinion from Tim Scott on why Republicans accused of racism. Why are Republicans accused of racism? And he's talking about and making accusations, it appears. He's pretty far out there. This is not your normal kind of guy. And this is who's running for Congress. For the presidency of 2020. And the real question that comes up, and the thing that I really need to focus on and I really want to ask, who invited this man to come to SUNY Broome? What organization was behind this man coming to SUNY Broome? Why was it that this was not made public to the general public? I was notified of it through my sources, several of them, and I got further confirmation from several of them. But not the general public. Why is that? Who is this targeted to? And what are we trying to see taught to our students? This man, Alan Howe, was supposed to be speaking at the classroom for Professor Mihalik, one of the political science professors at SUNY Broome University. That has been canceled. What exactly was he supposed to be talking about? What agenda is this? And this is very important, and this is why it's breaking news. It's breaking news because when we look at these things, we have to understand and we have to ask the question, who is influencing our students? How are they trying to influence our students? How extreme of an individual do we allow into the college? Okay, whether it's Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whomever. But when we do this, shouldn't that be made public? So if we're going to have some extremists or someone who apparently an extremist, and again, I don't know enough about Alan Howe, no one does, to truly make a final comment about this. So I don't want to misrepresent him. I'm truly not trying to. I literally was given a lot of this information within the last 45 minutes. So I do not want to misrepresent his position. I don't want to misrepresent his politics, but I'm trying to understand it. He seems, from what I can see and from what I can determine, this is someone who's on the extremity of the Democratic Party. He's very much in line with what we see with Adam Schiff. Individuals who can't give up the fact that the Democratic Party lost in 2016. Individuals that are willing to disrupt and possibly destroy our nation based on foundless accusations. Individuals that are willing to push an extreme agenda. And an individual who, and this isn't me saying this, but these are the voters who said this, an individual who apparently is not of interest to the voters in Pennsylvania. I mean, and I understand there was 38,000 people who voted in 2018 in the midterm elections for the Democratic House race in Pennsylvania. That's not a lot of people. I get it. But they rejected him outright. And yet he wants to be president, and he believes his message of collusion, his message of treason, which doesn't exist, is something that's worthwhile. We should be very concerned. And this is the message that is looking to be promoted at SUNY Broome. A message of his primary message, as it shows on his website, is to promote this image of treason and collusion that doesn't exist on our campuses and wants to disrupt that campus by that message. That's what I understand from it. That's what I see. I would love to hear from Professor Mihalik and have her explain exactly what's going on, who promoted this, how he got into to get invited to SUNY Broome, to our college, and who was invited to actually be speaking with him, and what message he was going to be putting before impressionable college students. It's very interesting to me. I'm not saying they can't do it, but I'm saying that they probably should have made it well aware to the public. They should have let more than 50 people know about it. Did the media know about it? As far as I know, I was the only media that was aware. That says a lot. So that is an issue. So we've got a few more minutes here before we're going to go to a break, and then we're going to be picking up with Eric Caron. But that's breaking news. Obviously, I wanted to speak about that. And I don't want to forget about the breaking news with Representative Adam Schiff, because this is a big deal. And that's what we're going to be speaking with our guest about. That's what we're going to be speaking with Eric about, and having a conversation to say, hey, what's going on here? Representative Adam Schiff, he now wants to have an investigation of the third or fourth, fifth investigation we've had so far. He wants to continue to promote this idea that is false, a false narrative, which is divisive to the nation, which takes away the public confidence and trust in our ability to have free elections. He wants to help promote this ideology that does not benefit anyone in the long term, and in the short term is purely partisan and political. Now, I understand you may say that the Republicans went too far when they decided that they wanted to go into during the House intelligence session, and they rebuked him, and they told him that he should be resigning. And you may say, hey, that was wrong. That was too much. But isn't this one of the consequences, both from Representative Schiff and from everyone else, in regards to this massive lie that was told to the United States public? And where did these dominoes go? This is only one of the dominoes that are continuing to fall. How is this affecting our ability internationally to conduct investigations, to be respected by other nations? How is this affecting individuals like, even though ISIS is essentially gone, now we're looking at the PPK, which I believe may be the next terror group in the Middle East that will become a problem. How is this all going to be interplaying? How are we going to be, how is America's ability to lead the world going to be affected? And that's a very serious and very strong question, a very important question. And I don't know that we have a clear answer on this. And that's why I want to speak to Eric Caron, who's a former, he's a retired US diplomat, a former US special agent, focusing on terrorism, money laundering. These are the areas internationally. He's worked with Interpol. And these are some of the things that he's worked on. And he has an insight we don't often get to hear about when these dominoes, our political dominoes in the United States, start falling. How is that going to affect everybody else? How is that going to affect our nation? How is it affecting the world? What can we expect to see happen next? That's the things I want to ask about. And we're going to have that conversation with him. And we're going to be speaking with him in just a few moments. In fact, I'm going to take a break a little bit early. So we've talked a little bit about the breaking news. And obviously, we've talked about Jesse Smollett a little bit. We're talking about the breaking news with Mr. Schiff. We've talked a little bit about who is this man, Alan Howe. Obviously, we're giving him more attention than anyone has given him, and probably anyone will give him. So he should be thankful for that. But at the same time, I think it's an important thing to say what's going on at the university and how is this influencing students? And we should ask that question. It's an important one. But what we'll do is we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll be speaking with Eric J. Caron, author of Switched On, and a former U.S. special agent who will have more information about what we can see happening in the near term. So with that, we're going to take a little break, and then we'll be right back.
anything more to say. You don't want no rebels on this way. 13 months of baby, no, no, no.
Hello, everybody. Hello. I am back. This is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, and we should have with us, and I'm just fixing our sound levels here, but I just want to make sure, we should have with us at the moment, Eric, can you hear me there? Oh, that's why. Had you on the wrong line. Can you hear us now, Eric?
Hey, Michael, thank you for having me. I sure can.
Okay. I went to the wrong, I was switching the wrong line for you. For a second there. It's the joy of technology sometimes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is.
Now, everybody, just to properly introduce, this is Eric J. Caron. And as I had mentioned before, he's the author of The Heart Switched On, The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent. I spoke with him first at CPAC 2019, and we had a great conversation there. I advise people to check out that interview. But today we're focusing, and I definitely want to talk a little bit about the book as well. But we want to focus on your experience, your unique insight as a former retired U.S. diplomat, a special agent, especially when we're talking about the big thing that's been happening in our nation right now, the whole issue of collusion, what's happening in Chicago, what's happening today with Representative Schiff, and how that all ties together. So let me just throw it out to you, Eric. Where do you want to start with that?
Yeah, Michael, once again, thank you for having me. Let's talk a little bit about Chicago because it's in the news today and it's been in the news in the last few days. And it's really a demonstration, in my opinion, of our criminal justice system gone bad. When you have prosecutors who are hired and their jobs are to prosecute bad guys and in some cases, in many cases, put them in jail because the crimes they've committed are so heinous. And in this Smollett case, you have, quite frankly, a prosecutor who should resign and should be looked at for obstruction of justice. Her deputy just 2 days ago, Michael, came out and was very proudly came out and said that this is basically normal course of business as far as dismissing felony cases. 5,700 cases they've dismissed and no pros in 2 years. 5,700 cases. And they're like, well, this is no big deal because we do it all the time. That's what's wrong. That's a red flag in Chicago. And, just look at the crime wave in Chicago over the last few years. It's horrendous. It looks like, it could be Afghanistan, for God's sakes. You have, and on top of that, Michael, you have these police officers risking their lives day in and day out in Chicago for what? And, Michael, the number one cause of death to police officers in America is suicide.
Yeah.
163, according to Blue Health, which I'm a part of, in 2018. 6 Chicago police officers committed suicide so far in the last 8 months. And this is a result of the frustration of our criminal justice system in Chicago and all the stress of being a police officer. So, the system is broken in Chicago and in many cities across America when you have prosecutors, both at the local and federal level, and I write about it in the book, Michael, that I was involved in investigating the CIA for obstruction of justice, and in the late 90s, and it went to the very top of the CIA, general counsel, and the federal prosecutors decided not to prosecute, and the evidence was overwhelmingly clear as to they obstructed in a federal investigation. And so it's just another example of our broken system. And we as a society need to understand that elections matter, and we need to elect people who put our interests and our security over their next election period.
Well, I absolutely agree with that. We have too many problems in our legal system that are compounding. And I think that we see that not just with what's going on right now with the collusion, but there's a meme that's been going around talking about Jussie Smollett and saying that I was set free so we could stop talking about collusion. And I think that's a problem when we can acknowledge the obvious, and whether it's exactly true or not, I think it is. But whether it is or isn't, the impression out there is a big deal because it means we're changing so much of our legal system and unbalancing the rule of law, which I think is all about. That's what I think the reality of this collusion is showing, that we have an unbalanced justice system that not only affects us, but on this partisan level, affects everyone up to the president.
Let's just talk about the media for a second. Malcolm X and I have his quote in the book, and Malcolm X said, the media is the most powerful entity in the world. They have the ability to make the innocent appear to be guilty and the guilty appear to be innocent. That's power, because you control the minds of the masses. And the fact of the matter is, under the Obama administration, relating to the alleged collusion between the Trump election folks, campaign folks, and the campaign folks.
Right.
It was it's becoming clearer and clearer every day that what has happened is that at the very top of the CIA and the FBI in the White House, they released classified information to select members of the media relating to individuals. They have basically, gave names of people that they should not have given names to, because that information, those names came from a classified intercept.
Yeah, that's what they call masking.
Thank you. And so they unmasked individuals and they leaked classified information to select members of the media to make it appear that, and to try to affect, obviously, the election. That's the real issue here, in my eyes going forward. That people in the Obama administration should be concerned that there will be future charges relating to unmasking and the leaking of classified information.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Eric, because, and again, you've worked with Interpol, you've worked overseas, you've gone after terrorists, you've gone after money laundering operations, both domestic and international. So you have an insight, I think, that is so unique from what we generally hear.
Yeah.
What do you believe, knowing what we know now, after 2.5 years, with many in the media, especially the far left media, CNN, MSNBC, that they have been discredited? What dominoes are falling now? How does this affect our ability to? One of my big concerns is the PPK out in Turkey, which is probably going to be the next ISIS in the Middle East. Our interactions with maybe Iran, North Korea, or any other investigation going on. What do you see?
Thanks, Michael. Great question. The rest of the world, as you know, Michael, because I know you've traveled a lot, and I've lived overseas in the Middle East for almost 4 or 5 years. They're watching. They're watching us very carefully. They have CNN. They don't have Fox. They have Al Jazeera and CNN, and they are big news junkies over there. So the rest of the world's watching this show, this soap opera going on with the Mueller investigation, and they're shaking their heads. But who else is watching? Our state sponsors of terror, such as Iran and the terrorist organizations. And believe me, they're getting ready to strike at the best moment they feel will have the greatest impact.
That's terrifying.
And we've taken resources. We've taken resources over these last 2 years from the Department of Justice and the FBI and CIA and other agencies, and away from the fight against terror and against international criminal groups. And that is not good. Just in these last few years, the Mueller investigation, over 50 FBI agents, analysts, linguists, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're looking at probably well over 100 FBI officials that could have been used, their services could have been used someplace else. And so we can't take our eye off this war on drugs and the war on terror. And I mentioned this to you, Michael, that we as a society need to wake up when it comes to contraband drugs flowing into our country from all ports of entry. And we need to start looking at drugs, especially fentanyl, as a WMD agent of mass destruction. It's killing, just in the last 4 years, we're looking at nearly 65,000 people dead due to fentanyl overdose. And then you put on top of that the homicide committed during those years. We're looking at well over 100,000 people dead. You got to be kidding me, due to drugs. That's most cities in America gone. So we need to understand that fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, we need to start looking at those drugs as a weapon of mass destruction. And this president is the only president in my lifetime who's finally providing the resources to men and women of law enforcement and taking off the gloves and saying, this is a war. We declared war on drugs in 1971, Michael, under the Nixon administration. It's about time we stop fighting this war. Because right now, really all these years, we've been fighting it with one hand behind our back.
Right. Right, we have. And I want to, you brought up something that's very important, I think, because what you highlighted is something that has not been discussed a whole lot in the media. We've put so much resources and personnel and money behind, 30 million, maybe $35 million behind the Mueller Report. We've put so many agents, as you were mentioning, and taking them away from things like the interventions and the border wall and the interventions on drug interdiction down with the DEA and other organizations down in South America and other parts of the world. We've had fentanyl come in unblocked. And you're right, it's a massive, I'm in the Northeast here in New York. We are one of the hot spots of the nation of people dying. Just in the last, I believe, week and a half, we had 5 people in upstate New York that died from overdoses of fentanyl. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but then again, that's 5 people who didn't need to die from a drug we don't need to have in this nation that we could have potentially stopped with that $30 million, the border wall, and a government that's working together rather than trying to depose a president. I mean, that's a consequence. That's a domino.
Yes, sir. And what's the price of a life? I mean, and, you know, and it's the same thing when you hear about, you've heard people will say, well, illegal aliens, you know, they're not responsible for most deaths, homicides in America. And, you know, the numbers, depending on where you go, you're looking at 500 deaths a year, give or take, and you're looking at 1,000 or more, or 1,000 or more, depending on, again, what resources you're using. So, you know, so you have people on the left who say, well, they don't commit as much crime as Americans. Well, guess what? One death is one too many when it's your son, or when it's your daughter, or father, or mom, killed by somebody who's not even been in our country. So I don't, you know, these numbers that people want to throw out, statistically, you know, illegal aliens commit less crime than Americans. Guess what? One is one too many when it's your father.
That's true. That's absolutely true. And I agree with you completely on that.
And we need to, again, history, unfortunately, history has a way of always repeating itself, Michael. And the 9/11, you know, 9/11 happens, again, and I've said this, our country, our government failed us on 9/11. And, you know, leading up to 9/11, I was with the government. There were so many, you know, indications that something bad was about to happen. You know, we had the embassies attacked prior. We had the USS Cole attack. And it was, you know, there was much chatter. There was a lot of things going on. A lot of mistakes made. We blundered it. We messed up. And here we are again today. And we're not switched on as a nation. We're so distracted. With politics and demonizing the president and calling him a traitor and liar night after night. It's a soap opera. And it's great for ratings. I guess it's great for ratings for CNN and others that are doing that. But it's hurting America in more ways than just morale. It's hurting America because the terrorists are watching us and they're laughing and they're getting ready to strike us. And the 9/11 Commission that we spent, I don't know, again, another $25 million, nice little book that nobody reads. In it talks in the executive summary, Michael. It says, about the most important failure was one of imagination. The most important failure was one of imagination, and that our leaders, failure in leadership to understand the gravity of terrorism, and that's what's happening today.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in my case. One of my cases I had in Switched On, the heart and mind of the special agent. I talk about a national security case involving a U.S. defense contractor. And the U.S. defense contractor, Michael, was hiring illegal aliens. And when we hit the place after doing a covert operation, we discovered 361 illegal aliens inside a U.S. defense contractor.
That's crazy.
Now, I was switched on. I did national security cases half of my career. And so, can you imagine if a terrorist found his way or her way into a U.S. defense contractor and what he or she could have done?
It's the scope of that. I can't even begin to
It gets
imagine.
demonized. Yes. When you read the book, Michael, you get to the section, you'll be shaking your head because I understood the death threats that I received from MS-13, but I couldn't understand why these politicians, Senator Kennedy Terry, Deval Patrick at the time, and the local mayor, I couldn't understand why these officials who made the laws, and we were simply the executive branch enforcing the law, they turned on us. And I was the target. Just like the president is the target. We ripped babies away from the mother's breast, and the babies were dehydrated, and the baby was sent to the hospital, and guess what? It was all a lie. And the Washington Post and the New York Times colluded with an advocacy group, and they ran stories that were false, and they knew it, and I prove it in the book.
And that's just another example of how many times we've seen so many partisan viewpoints promoted as real news, taking away from the real issue that's going on. We've got about 2 minutes, and so, but I do want to end this with a thought. I want to ask you a question and answer it as best you can. Looking from your window of experience, your depth of knowledge, and looking at it from, as you say in your book, the switched on perspective, the awareness, the heightened awareness of what's going on, what do you see as one of the biggest potential dominoes that may come as a result of the collusion, the realization that collusion does not exist, and how the continued push by many Democrats like Adam Schiff are going to affect the nation?
Michael, I'm just concerned once again that this soap opera, this hoax, is continuing on for the next few years. And that, DOJ in the Southern District of New York will be looking at some issues stemming from the report. I'm just concerned, again, that over the next 2+ years, we'll continue to the media will continue to cover these stories, and the liberal Democrats will be, focused so heavily on the president and his and the folks around the president, and issuing hundreds and hundreds of subpoenas and hearings and what have you. All the while, Iran and other terrorist groups will be scheming to attack us. That's the biggest threat.
That is an absolutely terrifying thought.
All we have to look, Michael, just look at Yemen.
Yeah.
Just look at Yemen. I mean, we're very comfortable here in America. And most people can't even point to the map to pinpoint Yemen. But that country, for all intents and purposes, is gone because of Iran. They got nearly 14 million people starving to death today. 14 million people starving, folks, because Iran is in the middle of that civil war in Yemen. Forget Syria.
Yeah.
Iran is responsible for what's going on in Syria. Iraq, the same thing. They're a safe haven for terrorist organizations. They provide training and money to Hezbollah and Hamas, Al-Qaeda. So, we better wake up. And we're so distracted as a country on demonizing the president that, we're going to get hurt again. And I'm very concerned about that, because next time it's not 3,000 people dead, it could be 30,000 people dead.
No, that's a reality. That's a very serious thought, and it is a potential problem. And I agree with you on that we have to be aware of it, as you say in the book, to be switched on about this.
Yes,
I know
absolutely.
We're out of time today, but obviously, Eric, I'm going to be continuing to keep in touch with you. I hope that it won't be because of, like with my fear of the PPK or something coming out of Yemen. But we know the Middle East is a volatile area. We know that much of the world is looking at, because of the collusion, the way 2020 is starting to shape up, that
Yes.
We're potentially ripe for another incident. So hopefully I'll have you on a much happier note soon. But definitely, either way, in the future, we're definitely going to have you back on the show.
Well, I look forward to Michael, and I just as a country, as individuals, we need to stay switched on, because globalization is great, and we're all making lots of money, but without security, we end up like Venezuela.
Absolutely. All right, I thank you. And folks, for everyone else, I want you to understand that we're always looking to see more information, more conversation with all of the people who are involved in making a difference in our nation, who have insight about what's going on. I look forward to hearing your comments about what you thought about our interview with Eric J. Caron, if you've read his book, and also where the dominoes are going, what's going on with Adam Schiff, and should he be removed from office, which I believe, personally, I would say yes, but we'll see. And is the Smollett case a distraction about the collusion? Has that distracted the nation from the issue of someone trying to take over our presidency? And also looking at Broome County, looking at what's been happening with the gentleman, Alan Howe, who wants to be a president. This candidate who has very questionable, it seems to be a very questionable format. Should we be promoting that in our colleges? These are all dominoes that come out of what we see with, as we were speaking with Eric Caron, the dominoes that come from just going into this collusion aspect. But folks, that was our show today. I've had a great time speaking with all of you about everything that's been happening, and I'm looking forward to talking with you more. Obviously, if you want to find out more, we want you to go over to our Facebook, and you'll be able to see the latest video over here. If you'll just go, you can see something else that's related and maybe of interest for you. Please don't forget to subscribe. But always, we're looking forward to your comments about anything and everything that could be involved. We look forward to talking to you again very, very soon. And we thank you for being with us on the Exceptional Conservative Network, the TECN TV, and No Soundbites Allowed. We'll be back on Saturday at 12 noon.